What's good, party people? I'm back with Andrew Feistner, and more than 2 weeks late for the premiere of Abigail and discussing Radio Silence's Ready or Not in this, the 47th episode of Murders with Mertens. Hello, horror fan, best friends, and ghoulish knights, and welcome to the 47th episode of Murders with Mertens. I am your host, Joe, and this is a podcast about horror, horror comedies, cosmic horror, body horror, folk horror, sci-fi horror, the horror adjacent, thrillers, the psychologically terrifying, scary films in general. Each episode, I sit down with a guest and discuss one of their favorite scary films so we can gush about everything that makes it just so damned cool. Viewers, thank you for the support. Don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment below. It certainly helps with the engagement. If you haven't already, maybe consider subscribing to the channel if you are so inclined. It's free to do, and you look cool doing it. Audio listeners, the show is also available on podcast services around the world like Apple Podcasts and Spotify, so don't forget to leave a review if you are so inclined. Enough of that housekeeping, though, as I have the great pleasure of welcoming back for his third appearance, Mr. Too Feist, Too Furious himself, Andrew Feistner. Welcome back, sir.
Glad to be back.
Yeah, well, it's been a little over a year this time. Last time around, it was during the Scream extravaganza, going through the first 5 films in preparation for the 6th. So yeah. Been up to anything fun lately?
I moved to a different place, and then I moved into this place. So nothing else really outside of that.
Just a lot of moving. Yeah, that's not quite so fun, but yeah, certainly exciting. Yeah, well, that's cool. I don't have a whole lot to report since the last time I recorded anything other than last night after work. I got to go see that 45th anniversary screening of Alien, and first time that I've finally gotten to see that on a big screen. I've seen it countless times over my 45 years on this rock, and it's freaking gorgeous on a big screen. Oh my God, this print, I don't know if it probably wasn't the most special print in the world because it was just your typical chain theater that I was at, but holy crap, was that movie crisp, and it just visually holds up so well. The audio in a theater was just glorious. Same old gripes that I have about this film that I hold super near and dear to my heart. It's one of my absolute favorite films, but it's got some ADR in it that isn't so good. They're a good chunk of the film, there's a couple of, extra dodgy shots at the end, but other than that, wow, what a movie. So yeah, that was super cool. I don't,
I think,
get to see those older films when they do re-releases like that. Just don't have the time, but yeah, that was super fun.
Yeah, I think that's really a testament to how good that is, that it's still holding up 45 years later, and it's just like, there's little things here and there, but otherwise, like, it's still just absolutely solid for the most part, and pretty much all the way through, really.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, films from the 2010s and then, the 2020s now, in, 20, 30, 40 years time, just to see how well they hold up visually. If not, just the films themselves. You look a lot of stuff from the aughts. There was the big craze of shooting things on handheld DV cams, consumer grade digital video cameras. And a lot of them do not look very good when you're trying to, watch it on a 4K TV then. They kind of look like crap. Kind of famously, David Lynch's most recent film, God, it's nearly 20 years old, but Inland Empire was filmed that way. And they did this AI upscaling that was approved by David Lynch, And it's, now in HD at least, and it does look significantly better. But, you kind of hate to see that kind of tinkering on a lot of films. I mean, even if it is approved by the director, but you hate to see films
Yeah.
drastically changed. It would have been nice if maybe the disc that it's on had the original version as well. I don't know. There's talk about the 28 Days Later, the third film here coming out here before too long. And that's another one of those films of that era that, you know, uh, it's got a very specific look, but you'd hate to see somebody tinker with that. And it's one of those things where I own it on DVD. There really isn't a reason to even upgrade that to a Blu-ray, other than
Yeah,
maybe features.
yeah, I think there's something special though about like the early aughts and like the 90s and the 80s era and
Hmm.
like when they're made and just like they were made on like film and
Yeah.
like some of them were on camcorders, so part of the aesthetic was the 480p of it all,
Yeah.
and like the video tracking stuff on the screen and all that kind of stuff. And I
Yeah.
think it's really cool that sometimes people go back to it for a style choice and like still have it be 4K, but it'll still kind of have that look and feel to it.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as it doesn't turn into an absolute crap release, I get that. I guess then, yeah, yeah, tinker away, but don't tinker too much. You get some things like, God, what's the film? Is it The French Connection, where there's some kind of weird tinkering that was done somewhat recently or something?
Yeah, that was last year. They censored out the N word, which obviously not a good thing to be saying. But like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's part of the film, and it's part of selling that the character is not a good person to begin with. So
Exactly.
it's like there's a reason for it. I know there's obviously no excusable use for it
No.
any other way. So it's just kind of crazy that even Criterion's streaming version had it censored out too,
Yeah.
without their.
Yeah. Strange. Just weird. But yeah. Eh, Again, that's you can absolutely understand that somebody's heart was in the right place with that one. But yeah.
Mhm.
Oof. Yeah. Yeah, but again, other than checking out some old films and both of our obsession with physical media, yeah, not a lot to
Mhm.
report, I guess.
Oh yeah.
But that's okay. That's okay. It gives us time to do something like this. Tonight we're digging into a mutual favorite here. Not a particularly old film, only creeping up on 5 years old now. We're getting into
Yeah.
2019's Ready or Not. Directed
Mhm.
by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette of Radio Silence, and written by Guy Busick and R. Christopher Murray. Ridiculously fun movie. Sort of a no-brainer as to why someone would love it, but I'd like to hear from you, Drew. Why Ready or Not?
Um. So I said before, previous um appearances that like horror movies where it's like being scared isn't usually my thing. I really like to have fun when if I'm going to be scared, I want to be enjoying myself. And just based on the trailer I saw for this before it came out, like, oh, yeah, I'll check this out. And then I saw it and I was like, oh yeah, this is a lot of fun. I really dig this. And so then it was like 2020 when they announced that Radio Silence was doing Scream 5. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll go check the other ones out now. And so I just was like, the whole like simple premise of like, hey, this is hide and seek, but there's going to be some bad twist to it that's like there's not going to be anything good coming out of this at all. And so I was really excited to check that out when I first saw it in the theater.
Yeah.
And I haven't revisited it since getting ready for this because I was just like holding it onto it being like really good and hoping that it wasn't going to age poorly in 5 years, which is something that's happened a lot in the last few years with a whole bunch of other movies, but not with this one because didn't really have anything to worry about.
Yeah, there's if there's anybody doing anything in any way objectionable in this film, it's because they're kind of a horrible person. It's
Hmm. They're
and
all horrible people.
oh
They're
yeah,
rich.
they're the worst. Yeah, man.
Yeah, they're just like they're all rich people, and like we'll get into it at the beginning. But when Grace is like, "I'm going to be part of this Ladomus empire," what do you call it? And he's like, "We prefer Dominion,"
Yeah,
which by definition, a territory or sphere of influence or control or realm is one definition, or a self-governing nation under the normal rule of British monarch. That doesn't fit them though, actually. But like like they feel like it's a sovereignty to their
right.
like board game empire,
Not
which is kind of a weird thing to call yourself when you're when you're doing something that's supposed to be fun and enjoyable.
right.
You
Well,
know?
not to mention that Dominion just seems to have like a creepy connotation for, horror fans in general, especially
Yeah.
after, Exorcist sequels and so on. But yeah,
Yeah,
man,
it's not a great way to start things off. But like,
no,
if you're trying to like sell your family on like, hey, I want you to like my family, that's just like, oh yeah, we have a dominion. It's like, uh, okay, that's that's kind of weird, but all right.
yeah. Yeah, hey, I love a good horror comedy as well. And I think it's
Mhm.
a great way for people that aren't necessarily the biggest horror fans to get into the genre, just because there's a lot of fun to be had in this subgenre. There's plenty that seem to be more comedy first and horror second. This feels maybe a little bit more horror first and comedy second instead. But
It
yeah,
really flips it quickly. Like,
yeah,
um, we'll get into it, but like
yeah,
the the first kill in the hide and seek game with Grace, it's horrifying what happens, but then it immediately flips to being really funny. And I think that's just a really hard thing for them to do, but they absolutely nailed it. And just
yep.
yeah,
Yeah, these
great.
guys, they as they say, they understood the assignment. Radio Silence, I think, does a very, very good job in this subgenre. I haven't seen much of their, stuff from anthologies. I need to get into some of those films, like what is it, Southbound, and some of the VHS films. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm just curious how much of the comedic tone plays in some of those as well, because
Mm.
it certainly works well in this. The two Scream films that they did, and then of course Abigail. As we're
Hmm.
recording this, that film's been out for about a week. Maybe not the
Yep.
best timing on our part with, the search engine optimization and everything. But, but that
Yeah.
said, oh, Abigail is a super fun ride as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, they know what they're doing with this stuff for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Abigail, I think, is much more horror leaning than this one, but that's
mhm.
okay because it's also a fun time. And
Yeah.
it's kind of weird how like there are two like movies that are bookending their Scream work
Hmm.
are essentially reverses of each other.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I won't go too deeply into Abigail. It's
Nah, that's
freshly out, so I won't spoil it. But it's just something to keep in mind if you haven't seen Abigail yet, and you have seen this.
Yeah, and that's one of those films that I will definitely rewatch, because I think it's going to be just eminently rewatchable. It was a super fun time. I was laughing my ass
Mhm.
off in that theater. Uh, but yeah, yeah. As far as Ready or Not goes, what do you say we get into it? We start with a crash of thunder and an awesome opening credit sequence that very well would have been created with AI if this movie were made 5 years later, because you get
Yeah.
all these boxes and artwork for board games. the
Yeah,
the Ladomus family gaming company, or whatever they're called.
the Dominion. Yeah,
Yeah, the
that's
Dominion.
yeah,
Yes, we have
yeah.
all their different games, starting with LaBelle's Gambit, the original
Mhm.
board game that started it all for them,
Yep.
and the camera just tracks along this hallway, displaying all these different games with just the coolest artwork from various time periods, and we wrap that off with a pair of young boys running through the dark halls of this mansion, and Daniel and Alex, and the older boy Daniel hides his brother in this closet, telling him not to come out. Um, and they look terrified, and rightly so, because Daniel's confronted
Yeah.
by this wounded man begging for help, and uh, they've really flipped the script in a fun way in all of this, because you're concerned about the kids at first, like they're being chased, but this guy comes out with, basically this spear in his gut, begging for help, and instead Daniel screams out, "He's in here," or something of the like. There, alerting his
Yep.
family to
Yeah.
where the man is, and he takes another blast from a spear gun, and we have a bride being held back as she's just crying and just shrieking. This is Helene. This is her new husband, Charles, who's
Mhm.
being killed by these masked assailants. And a woman kneels down in front of Daniel, and telling him, what a good job he did. And you can absolutely tell it's Andy McDowell. It's supposed to be. There is a younger actress playing her in this role, and they just throw an ADR for it. But
It's great casting too.
oh yeah,
Like it's all believable with everybody that where it's like they've aged up, but you can tell that that's who it's supposed to be.
yeah,
It's really cool, and just Daniel being in the like he's in here. It's like, oh, that's, and then like getting hit again, but he doesn't really flinch when he gets shot again. And so like that's like obviously not a normal thing, and it's pretty messed up, and you don't really
yep, yep.
you can really tell that something like that is going to have an effect on him later.
Yeah, and there's conversations about this from other characters later on about, finding things normal or not. But
Hmm.
yeah, Charles is dragged away, and then the doors shut on this room, and we cut to 30 years later, and we get our bride, Grace, kind of nervously working through her shit before her wedding and having a smoke. And Alex, now all grown up, enters the room, and they have this super cute back and forth that goes on for a while here.
Hmm.
Him, asking her if, she really wants to do this. And I love how he takes the cigarette from her too. And it's like, oh, you're smoking. And then he immediately just takes a drag off of it too.
Hmm.
It's, they're both getting ready for what will be sort of a nerve wracking, obnoxious day, right? It's a wedding.
Yeah.
Yeah. But,
It really, like, reads differently the second time you watch it,
oh, yeah.
because you watch it the first time and you're like, "Are you sure you wanna do this?" And it's like, "Oh, that's just normal pre-wedding stuff," but then you see it the second time with the context, like, "Oh, he's trying to give her the out," and it's real, and you don't really understand it because he can't tell her anything, and just it's a really good performance there from Mark O'Brien there as
Yeah.
Alex, just trying to he really did, like, honestly, the whole cast is great through the whole
Oh,
movie.
yeah. This is an outstanding cast, and I think Radio Silence has had some good luck with that. Between the Scream films, and then recently Abigail. They're all freaking winners in Abigail. Everybody is so much
Yeah,
fun in that movie. Dan Stevens, super underrated in that film. Not
yeah.
everybody talks about him, but his performance is awesome. Um,
He is having the most fun in that role that he's
Oh
given.
God, yeah, just chewing that scenery. As everybody really does in this film too. It's
Mhm.
it's wonderful. Um, yeah, I think we get a little bit in here about how Alex is estranged from his family. We get a little bit about Grace, Samara Weaving's character, how she's a former foster child, and they go more into this in the next few scenes. But yeah, she's game. And when there's the moment about the little foreshadowing there about in 30 minutes she's about to be part of the Ladomas dynasty empire, and he's like you said, we prefer Dominion. Um,
Mhm.
and
It's
then
really it's cute, but
oh
there's
yeah,
still like a sinister toning to just the word Dominion, honestly.
yes, because at the end of the day, they're that level of rich where no, they're not just owners of large businesses or high ups within a company. No, 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 they're that level of rich where yes, they are like a step removed from royalty, and they know it. And they kind of finish up their conversation, sort of glance at the setup outside, and he asks her if she's ready, and she responds with this super quick "oh fuck no," and then smash cut to the title card, ready or not. uh
I love the title card drop. It's so good.
yeah, the editing on that's super, super good. It's and you get, typical like string wedding music going along with that title card drop as well. It's good. I like it a lot. It's interesting too that it's one of those title card reveals that happens after all the opening credits. Um
Mhm.
but I'm here for it. I'm here for it. And so we move outside to the ceremony and some wedding photography, and they're kind of cutting back and forth between all of this, and then little side conversations of everyone.
Mhm.
The person photographing everyone is the butler Stevens. This is the exterior of the Billy Madison house, right?
Yeah, they talked about that in the extras, and I think they use it in The Boys also in the first season.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And,
Nice.
we did miss something here in the beginning, though,
Oh.
before the title card, because, Daniel comes in, and he messes with
Oh.
Alex,
Yeah.
and that really establishes the relationship of just how much they do love each other, even though Alex has been gone for a while.
Yeah. And
And
Daniel
it's really
is.
creepy how the
Yeah.
family's, like, putting so much emphasis on, like, "You brought him back to us," and it just doesn't feel like it's a,
Yeah.
"We're so glad you're joining us." It's, "We're just glad that you brought him back," and it's just
Yeah.
like, that's
A-
okay, but,
And it does feel a
I don't
little
know
bit
about
more
you.
like you brought him back to the cult, and not so much you
Yeah.
brought him back as a member of the family. It's
Mhm,
it's definitely got that vibe to it. Yeah, and then Daniel and Alex, you definitely understand a lot about their relationship in that Alex is very much the older brother. Um, he
mhm,
grabs him around the neck and they roughhouse a little bit and everything. You get
mhm.
their old dynamic very quickly. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
good call. Um,
And, Helene is also the aunt that we saw in the beginning that's crying about
yep.
her husband. She is the only person that's, like, and not even like, she's very actively bitter about this whole wedding affair,
Hmm.
and she's the only one that's not clapping in the crowd when they pass by,
Yep.
like, after the vows and everything, and
Yep.
so it's like
All she does
a
is
lot you
glare.
can yeah, you get a lot about her character and a lot of small stuff.
Yep. And everybody else, as we cut back and forth, between ceremony and the photography and the little side conversations, we've got Daniel and his wife Charity. She's like, she'll never be one of us, and he says to her, "Of course not, dear. She has a soul." That speaks
Another
so
beautiful
many
thing.
volumes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm,
We get Becky, the matriarch, having her little conversation with Grace over a cigarette. Grace talks about, how she was a foster child, how she had great parents and everything, but ultimately, nothing was really permanent. And she wants, their family to be her family, and she wants that permanence. And
mhm,
Grace, Becky just wants her to bring Alex back to them.
Mhm.
And they go in a little bit more about how it's just been years that he's been away, and you get the little side conversation about how usually it's like a 3-year courtship in their family, but this happened in 18 months. And again, Helene just glaring at everything and everyone. She is not pleased. Um, yeah.
Yeah, you gotta imagine that she's traumatized, honestly,
Yeah.
with just how that happened, and Daniel's probably traumatized too,
Oh, yeah.
because he's why her husband died, and and I
Yeah.
mean, Helene talks about it later, but like that was the only person she ever loved, and he got killed for this game.
Right.
It's so heartbreaking, but it's
Even
also
though
like
she's all
here's
in. She's all in
yeah.
still. And so
Mhm.
that's got to be really hard for her to wrap her own head around too. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and
You gotta wonder if it's like if she became even more all in after that, or if it's like she was all in, but she loved him so much it was still causing her distress, and she's just been a fractured, broken woman since then. You
oh,
know.
she seems pretty broken, all right. I love in these scenes too that Samara Weaving, she's shivering because of the cold and that wedding dress, and it translates like super well to her nerves and her performance.
Hmm.
She looks like she's kind of shaking because of just everything that's happening.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's like perfect coincidence. It's like
Hmm.
I love little
Yeah.
happy accidents like that in filmmaking. It's wonderful. Um,
Yeah.
so all this wraps up with the ceremony and everything, and we get Alex and Grace retiring to their room, and she wants to be a little frisky, and he needs to tell her something.
Hmm.
There's something kind of important. And well, now she's like, hey, we need to get these pants off, and they're interrupted by Anne Helene just standing there in the corner watching them. And she reminds them, hey, we got to get downstairs for midnight. And she just disappears through this like door to a servant's passage.
Hmm.
And
It's
Grace,
so appropriately creepy for her.
oh, yeah.
It's just like, and it's just like, oh my, like I would be furious if that was me in that situation. But
Grace is
Alex knows.
sufficiently freaked out too by it all.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's
She's
revealed.
not like absolutely fuming, but she's
No.
clearly, understandably upset and
Yeah.
bothered by
There is a
it.
whole lot of what the fuck going on. Yes.
Hmm.
It's revealed by Alex that they need to play a game with the family at midnight. They're big on tradition. They made their money in gaming. This is what we do anytime somebody marries in. Um, and I love her little line about having to put her game face on, and in other words, fixing her makeup and all that. And she's gonna, play the shit out of checkers. Uh,
Hmm.
or whatever. There's the comment about how they'll meet in the music room and how oh, sure, that's a totally normal room to have in a house.
Yep.
Um, again, the ultra rich, yes.
Yep.
Um, yeah, these are very much the we own a Supreme Court justice level of rich. Um,
Yep.
so we get everybody kind of gathering in the music room, and that awesome shot of Grace coming down the staircase. This is
Hmm.
super cool house. That dress, that wedding dress is so awesome too. It
Hmm.
is a lovely dress. And so to see what
It's
happens to it over the course of this film is pretty
such
cool
a
too.
shame.
There's that, but
But
also it's really cool. uh,
yeah, I mean, it's that like I imagine she immediately got rid of that dress after everything happened after this. But like, yeah, we'll get into it later.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
As everybody's gathering, the boy's sister Emily finally arrives with her husband Fitch and sons Georgie and Gabe. They're extra late. There was a whole kerfuffle with their flight because Fitch refuses to fly commercial because, of course, he's got to be like extra smarmy because he's that guy.
Hmm.
And Emily is super coked up and still has some around her nose.
Yep.
The guy that plays Fitch, I love him on Orphan Black. This dude is awesome. Um,
This is the only thing I've seen him in, but yeah,
yeah.
he was really funny, and the kids were being super annoying too. With
Oh
like, and then
yeah.
they're like running around with the ritual mask. Is like, oh come on, man! And Daniel's like, hey, knock it off. And it's
Yeah.
just like,
At first watch, you're
but of
thinking,
course,
stop
yeah,
being little shits, nephews. But, second watch, you're
mhm,
like, oh, they're about to give it away. No, knock it off. Be
yeah,
kids, be
and it's
cool. Be cool. Um,
and yeah, they were wearing those masks too when Charles got
yep.
earlier. So he's probably had a
Yeah.
flashback for that. He watched a
Yeah.
man
Uh,
pretty much die in front of him,
honestly,
and
yeah.
of course, yeah, the being the rich parents are like, oh, they're fine. It's just like, no, no, that's not a normal thing to do, but they don't do anything normal anyway.
Right, right. And now it's time to get down to business. Uh, so the kids are taken off by a maid to be put to bed. And Stevens shuts the doors to the music room. And Tony, the patriarch of the family, he starts to explain the history of the Ladomus family and how his ancestor Victor Ladomus made a deal with a strange man named Labale, which is a
Mhm.
play on a biblical name of, essentially the
Belial.
devil. Yep.
Yeah,
Um,
Hebrew for wicked or worthless, personified
yeah.
for devil. Yeah. And of
Yep.
course, Henry Czerny, always good at exposition
Oh,
between
yeah.
this and Mission Impossible. Like, come on, man.
How happy were you that they
He's one of.
brought him back for Mission Impossible? Come on.
I was so happy, and it's
Yes.
just like he's in the top tier of people where if he's giving exposition, like it's gonna be great.
Yep. 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 Absolutely love him in this role. Um, so yeah, Victor Ladamus and this Mr. LaBelle made a pact where LaBelle basically helped him start his fortune in in exchange for the family observing this little tradition. At midnight on their wedding day, every new member draws a game card from LaBelle's puzzle box. And they also go in this exposition to, this was like on a transatlantic boat trip in the
Hmm.
1800s, where basically if Victor was able to figure out the puzzle box by the end, then LaBelle would, you know,
Hmm.
essentially give him a prize. But yeah, yeah. So in this ritual, a blank playing card is inserted in the box, and the new family member draws the card out, and whatever is printed on the card, they have to play. And I forget what Charity says she played, but Fitch is like, I got Old Maid. What the fuck is Old Maid?
Yeah, I think of her. I think her shit. What was it?
It wasn't
Might have been
checkers.
chess. I thought it was like chess or backgammon or
Oh,
something.
yeah, I think she did say
It was. It
chess.
was.
It
It
wasn't
was one of
Connect
those
4.
old classic. Yeah, it was. It was very much an old traditional kind of game
Yeah,
that you could get from any store. Yeah.
right. Right. And yeah, so ultimately, Helene, during all of this, basically from the introduction of Emily and Fitch, and I love Helene's little dig at her brown-haired niece. You continue to exist, she says.
It's such a great backhanded, like, it's not really a compliment, but
Not in any way.
it's just very much forward facing open palm slap.
Yep.
It's so good. And
Yep.
then, of course, she draws like one bad card of hide and seek. And the
Yep.
only people at the table concerned are Becky, Daniel, and Alex.
Yeah, but I think a lot of people's faces ultimately fall. They understand what they got to
Hmm.
do. I don't think anybody wants to
Hmm.
necessarily have to do this. Not anybody at that table ultimately really wants to have to do that. I don't even think Helene. I think this, probably draws up a lot of, bad shit from,
Hmm.
her own experience 30 years prior. But yeah, Grace draws that hide and seek card and she just kind of laughs as she pulls it out and then flips it around. She's like, I got hide and seek.
Hmm.
Alex, oh God. Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looks like
He's
he
like,
just took a knife to the gut. Yeah.
yeah, it's like we have to play this, right? And nobody really contests it. I'm curious. I wonder if, like, in the past, anyone has contested this. Like, let's see if we can play another card.
Yeah, well, they do
But
talk about
I
people
mean,
that
they talk.
didn't play whatever the game
Yeah.
was and how, remember that family, they died in a fire and
Hmm.
yeah, and so
Yeah.
on. Yeah. So basically both the new bride and groom end up dying if the game isn't played. Um
Yeah.
but yeah, so ultimately Grace just kind of laughs it all off. She offers a toast to Mr. LaBelle. Everybody just
Hmm.
somberly raises a glass. It's
Hmm.
yeah, everybody is not the happiest in this moment. But yeah, and then Tony kind of takes her aside too to explain the rules, and Grace mentions, "Hey guys, you kind of have a bit of an advantage," and she kind of nods towards these cameras everywhere. But he's like, "No. We play these, whatever game is chosen, we play it in the most traditional way possible. We're going to turn off all the cameras. We're not going to use any of the tech to try to hunt you down. But ultimately, yeah, we got to play." And she asks, "Is there any way for me to win?" He's like, "Well, you could survive till dawn."
Yep.
And oh, yeah. So she just again kind of chuckles and just sort of
Wanders off.
goes off to hide herself as Stevens puts on this old timey, like 1940s, 1950s record with the hide and
Hmm.
seek song, which I think was written just for the movie.
Yep. It was.
Yeah,
Yeah. It was. Yeah. I even wrote like a little fun thing for this
yeah,
because it's Henry Zerny, and of course, Kittredge.
yeah.
Kittredge. And, so I wrote this whole little Mission Impossible briefing for Grace. Good
Bye.
evening, Mrs. Grace Ladomus. Since you have fallen in love with my son Alex, he has finally come home and decided to be part of the family again. Seeing as you and he are to be wed, it seems only appropriate that you join our family through one of our old traditions, as Mr. the Bale demands. Your mission, should you choose to accept, is to hide until dawn. Be found and you will be attacked. Be caught and you will be killed, and the family will deny your existence to the world. Good luck. You have the count of 100.
Oh God. Uh, that's perfection.
I thought it'd be apt, just
Yeah.
because it's Henry Zerny.
Of course, of course. As Grace is looking around for someplace to hide, and as the record plays, we get the family arming up. If Fitch gets a crossbow that he's not pleased about. Charity gets a spear gun. Becky, she's got a bow. Um,
Yep.
Alex, I think, has a rifle. I can't remember what
Emily has a
yeah,
revolver, I think.
tiny little gun, but I can't remember what Tony's got. But they're all getting kitted out, and
Yeah.
she finds this dumbwaiter to hide in, Grace, and then we get that shot of the whole family all armed up, all ready to go
Mhm.
as the song's wrapping up, and yeah,
They got their lanterns with them.
oh yeah,
So it's very old traditional, and it's really cool that they have the house, like, it looks and feels like it's candlelit,
hmm
but, like, if you look in the background, some of the candles just aren't even lit.
yeah.
So, like, there's a lot of work that they put in to make it have that feel without actually doing it, because they had to shoot this in, like, really old antique filled places where that's a no-go.
Yeah. There was definitely commentary about the candles there on the commentary track. How as much as they
Mhm.
wanted all that candlelight, yeah, they really couldn't in most shots. Um, as Grace is sitting there in the dumbwaiter, she's bored as hell. She starts biting her nails, and it's audible and it's super gross. It just I
Mhm.
did not care for that. But yeah, essentially, Charity is left in charge to ensure that Alex stays in the music room because
Mhm.
it's understood. Of course, this is his bride. He's gonna probably, try to stop somebody from doing something to her. But,
Mhm.
certainly it happened with Helene that she had to be held back 30 years prior. Um,
Mhm.
and Grace gets a little bored. So she pops out of the dumbwaiter and kind of wanders around. During all of this, we also have the maid reading to the boys as they go off to sleep. And I can't remember exactly what she's reading, but in like subsequent watch throughs, you notice that it's something kind of sinister sounding.
Yeah.
Um, but ultimately, the maid sort of wakes up and realizes Georgie's not in bed. So she goes off looking for him. Grace gets
Just
back.
like his dad. Or
Yep.
no, just like his uncles, the
Yeah, 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 yeah.
family's kids, yeah.
Yep. And Grace gets back to Alex's. I'm pretty sure this is his childhood bedroom that they're staying
Mhm.
in. But she gets back there, and he grabs her and pulls her down behind the bed. And we get the maid poking through the room looking for Georgie, calling out to him. And next thing you know, she's blasted in the head by Emily, who thinks that she's Grace. I love the line about, the big white
That
wedding
was
dress, because these
that was
maids
my
are all dressed in
favorite
black.
maid.
Yeah, yeah, Claire. She was my favorite. And that comes back. Henry Czerny later. Not Claire. She was my favorite. That's so
They
good.
the maids and help are just so perfect for being cannon fodder for just because the family is incompetent in most
Mhm.
ways of murder.
Yes, yes. Yeah, for as all in as they are with their satanic rituals and everything, they are fairly incompetent at the end of the day. Yeah, and these maids look like they're brought right out of like a Robert Palmer music video from the '80s too. I'm pretty sure that was the look that they were going for when they when they designed their wardrobe and their makeup and everything.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
yeah, this Claire, she's on the ground, just bleeding out and gurgling from this blast to the head. And Grace is sufficiently freaked out, but Alex keeps her quiet and they hide there. And basically, the family bursts into the room. Emily thinks she got her. Nope, nope, not so much. And she has a little freak out, at what she did. Uh, there's the line about the giant,
The opposite colors, Emily.
yeah, 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 giant white wedding dress. She is not very bright. She is coked out of her mind.
Mhm.
The Claire was my favorite line. We get we get Tony and Helene flipping for who gets to carry the arms and who gets to carry the legs. This comes back multiple times as bodies have to
Yeah.
be carried. And I love Helene's little waddle as they carry her out of the room. There's the big
Yeah.
concern that they dispose of the bodies so that Grace doesn't find her, because they still want to kind of keep her in the dark as what's going on, because it makes it
Mhm.
easier to ultimately find her, right? Um,
Yeah.
so as the family disposes of the body, Alex sneaks Grace into the servants' passage and kind of reveals the curse of the family.
Mhm.
About how if the new member draws the hide and seek card, the rest of the family has to find them and sacrifice them before dawn, or they will all die instead. They kind of have it out. It's revealed that the game was last played by Helene's husband, Charles. Somewhere in here, Emily does a massive bump because she goes back to find her gun. In other words, she just needed a private space to do a little more blow. And Fitch is also in a bathroom somewhere watching a YouTube video on his phone, getting to know your crossbow. And I think the guys in the video are the writers of the film.
Yep.
Um, it's,
Emily is the perfect messed up child for the family.
oh, yeah.
It's just I'm not good at this.
Yes. I don't know what I'm doing. It's just, she's also such a daddy's girl. She always goes running crying to him,
Yep.
just, as a way to kind of get out of being stupid. Um, but Alex and Grace, they're not in the best of places here as they have this
Mhm.
conversation. He's upset because, and this is just, this is totally on him. The whole, if I had told you, you would have left me thing. Gross, dude. Gross. it's,
Yeah,
and
but and then there's also the you wanted to get married, and she's like, "Oh, this is on me now," and he's like, "Oh,
yeah.
I'm okay. I'm sorry. That was
She kind of slaps at him a little bit there too. It's like, like you do.
yeah."
Yeah.
Kind of has this whole thing of like, I think it seems like it really was her idea to be married, and he was just fine with her not with just being with her and not getting married because
Yeah, for one thing,
he
he'd
explains at the
never
wedding.
have to go back to the
Yeah,
family, you know?
yeah,
Um,
because it has to be at the house, and they have to play the game, and
yeah.
so like even if they elope, they would still have to come back for the game.
But even on a lower level of, he just doesn't want to have anything to do with his family, he's fine
Hmm.
living in sin because that means he never has to talk to them. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. So, um, yeah, he basically tells her that he's going to try to cut off the security system so that she can get out. And then, it's around here that they depart and she rips the bottom of her dress off to make it into a shorter length, which is funny because it's almost like she's bustling it for like a wedding
Hmm.
reception, like you typically do. So yeah, just continuing to tear this dress apart though. You see her Chuck Taylors and everything. It's a good look for her.
Yeah,
So she steps
they
out.
had to get those. They had to paint those because Converse didn't make that color anymore.
Oh no. That's
Yeah,
I
so
I wear a lot of Chucks, occasionally Jack Purcells, and I have the worst time getting colors that I actually like. So I end up wearing them a little too long, and you know how they tend to fall apart. But it's always
real
because I
easy.
can never get the color that I actually want. It's sad.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's somewhere after this that we've got they're still trying to dispose of the body of Claire, and Alex is with them, and they're talking about just trying to track Grace down, and she just pops out of this passageway into the hallway, and Daniel's like, there she is.
Founder.
Found her, yeah. And there's Emily, and she's just starting to blast away with the revolver, and she's hitting everything and firing at her dad and her aunt, and she's got that wonderful "I don't know what I'm doing" scream, and Grace just kind of runs past her at that point. Uh,
Hmm.
Grace kind of hides out in this room that looks like, kind of a study or a billiards room or something like that. And who should pop in the door but Daniel? He's like, oh, hey. He's just, I'm just here for another drink. He's just here for the bourbon. He pulls up a bottle of wild turkey and, he talks to her for a little bit. He's kind of disillusioned with the family and,
Hmm.
he doesn't really want to be doing any of this, but he
Hmm.
also kind of admits that they have to. It just kind of is what it
Yeah,
is. And he likes her, you know,
yeah.
and so he wants to,
Becky likes her too.
yeah,
Yeah, like
yeah.
it all seems that everybody likes her, but it's still like they have to. But Becky does not like Fitch, and it's established earlier when they're searching together, and he has the crossbow, and he accidentally like points it at her, and she like quickly like pushes it away from herself because she knows
Uh-huh.
that he would probably shoot her.
Yep. Yeah. I love how it's the people that married into the family that have no problem doing what they're doing because for one
Hmm.
thing they were introduced to this massive wealth and power, but yeah, it's interesting that there are some of the most horrible people at the end of the day. um so
Like Charity,
yeah, oh god, she's the
and
worst.
she's similar to Grace, or not? Yeah, to Grace, but
Yeah, in some ways, in
Charity's
that
like,
she came from
I'm going to,
nothing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, And so she's like, and apparently she's very attached to it because she's like, I cannot lose this. You know, when it's
Hmm.
like it's either kill Grace or
Right.
die, pretty much.
Right. So, yeah, Daniel's going to give her a head start. And,
Hmm.
he's counting 1,000, 1,000. Then, he lets out one of those, she's in here. And, oh, guys, you just missed her as he sits there drinking his bourbon. Um, and
Yep,
everybody,
which was a leftover from a deleted scene because
oh,
earlier there was a deleted scene where Grace and Daniel were having a moment, just like getting to know each other, and the bourbon was part of that, and then it was left
okay.
over there on the table. So that's where that was planted, but
I,
it's deleted. So
I
yeah,
wonder if those scenes are on the Blu-ray. They probably are. I should look those up. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, everybody kind of crowds into the room, and one of the maids comes flying in, saying that she just ran into Grace, and this is where Emily triggers the crossbow in Fitch's hands, and the maid takes that bolt right through the back of the throat, right through her mouth,
Hmm.
out the back of her head, and
Hmm.
Emily's in a bad way.
Yeah, and everyone keeps asking, "Can we just use her?" And Helene is always the one. It's like the help doesn't count. Why do we keep asking this? And then she's just like, ah, and then she just beheads the help.
Yeah, because she keeps getting interrupted by the gurgles of the death rattle of this poor maid. So yeah,
Hmm.
she goes over and she beheads the maid. We find out later because there's a headless body getting thrown into the goat pit. But
Hmm.
yeah, this is where Tony is like, we need to just turn on the cameras. This is taking too long, and I love Helene, because she's like, pick and choose, as far as them following tradition or going with new ways. And, it's that family member that's like, extra traditional when somebody's in the family maybe isn't quite as religious or whatever. It's
Hmm.
that same type of reaction. I think her pick and choose comment there is so relatable to so many people with families.
Hmm.
It's, it's good. I enjoy that quite a
Yeah,
bit. Um,
yeah.
and
But Alex has already turned on the cameras, so they don't really have to do it. But they know it's him, and so they know that he's sabotaging somehow.
Yep, yep. And we get Grace popping out of one of the servants' corridors into the music room where she gets armed up, and she gets a look at herself, and she's a little,
He looks awesome.
yep, yep. She's kind of like a badass because she's got the bandolier of shells for the elephant gun that she's carrying. Um,
Hmm.
and she pops out of one of the servants' tunnels there into um, this little kitchenette, which is probably like not the main kitchen of the house, but more of like a servant's kitchen,
Hmm.
which also has the back door, except her way is blocked by the family butler, Stevens, who's making himself some tea. And yeah, this is where Alex is trying to figure out the locks and everything. They kind of cut back and forth between them. Um, and Grace is like sneaking around the island in the kitchen, trying to stay hidden. She's trying to load the elephant gun as well, which is loud as shit. Um,
Hmm.
and Stevens kind of hears stuff, and he's being sort of loud himself, so it kind of helps cover up her noise because he's just
Hmm.
kind of singing to himself there as he's making his tea, and then he suddenly
Here's the
no
lock.
yeah, he hears the lock and the lights brighten up a little bit, and she pops up behind him with the gun, which of course is just for show. None of the
Hmm.
rounds are actually live, and they fight, and she takes the teapot and smashes it on his face, which would,
And it's so gross
oh
to see
yeah,
him later.
yeah, that
And
burn
it's
mark
like all
and
blistered
people's
over.
reactions to the burn mark because they're like, ugh.
Mhm.
it's,
Yeah. And
it's
Stevens is like so smug when he catches her, and he's just like, "That's just for show, honey." And then like the whole kerfuffle breaks out, and
yeah, yeah.
yeah, he's a great like secondary villain
Oh yeah,
underneath the family.
he's very much like a Terminator too. This guy does not stop
Hmm.
because she smashes that teapot over his face and burns him, and you think he's going down, but instead he grabs a knife out of the block and basically blocks her way from this back door. So she has to, kind of run off in the other direction then. Um, and let's see here.
Then we cut to Alex in the security room
Yeah, because
with
Daniel and
Daniel and
Tony break
Tony.
in and they
Yep.
have their little fight where Alex is kind of choking Tony out. But ultimately, Daniel, does his family proud and kind of takes out Alex there.
Mhm.
And yeah,
Then they do the coin flip again. It's almost like everything is a game for them,
yeah,
which I think really adds to like the sadisticness of the family, really. Where
yep,
it's just like, yeah, they just I'll just coin flip to see which part I have to grab. Oh,
yep.
look, I have to grab the head. Yeah.
Yeah, and is this the part where Daniel's like, I don't give a shit? And
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah. He
yeah.
just grabs the part. Yep.
Yep, yep. And then Grace gets back to the dumbwaiter and where she's going to hide, and then finds the third maid in there who seems like she's not part of all of this. That it was
Hmm.
just a gig for her because she's like terrified, probably because she's seeing the other maids dropping like flies. Um,
Hmm.
and instead, all of a sudden, she starts to yell for the family. But then the dumbwaiter gets activated and the maid gets kind of caught inside and ultimately gets crushed in the doors. Um, so Grace just runs off and leaves her there
Yeah.
because what are you gonna do? It's
Hmm.
I love when the family finds the maid again. Of course, we get Daniel saying, "And then there were none." Wonderful Agatha Christie reference because
Yep.
Agatha Christie just fits in this movie as well with an old manse
Oh
like
yeah.
this and murder afoot and
Yeah.
everything. And then there were none is such a fun story as it is. That's
And it's referenced again in Abigail, which is really fun.
yes. Absolutely, yes. It's probably like a favorite story of uh
Matt, Tyler, and Chad.
yeah, and
The,
probably
yeah.
Guy Busick too, because he's like the through line of the writers, isn't he? Because
Yeah.
he was
Yep.
on the two Scream films, and I'm pretty sure he was the writer for Abigail, but I could
Yeah,
be
I think
wrong.
it was.
Um, but yeah, and then there were none. It's it's somewhere around here too that it's revealed that Alex is the only living member to have ever actually seen Mr. LaBelle. When he was a child, he saw him sitting in a
Mhm.
chair. Um, and Grace gets out of the house finally at this point. I think Charity's outside having a smoke and sees her running and fires off her spear gun. But of course, it's at a distance where she's never going to hit her. And it just kind of whistles through
Mhm.
this tree and you hear it hit a bird.
She's like,
Yes, it's so good because everybody's so fucking inept in this movie for the
mhm.
most part, right?
It,
Um,
it really, their numbers do not really give them any advantage at all.
no, Grace just gets a little banged up, is all. Um, so yeah, she runs off to the goat shed, Grace, and she enters, and you hear the little goats doing goat shit, and she
Mhm.
it creeps through the darkness there, and then she moves closer and closer to this boarded up thing. You really can't tell
Mhm.
exactly what it is until the reveal,
Yeah.
but she finds Georgie, and she's concerned for him because he's a child, but it's
Mhm.
revealed that he has a gun and he fires through her hand.
And she punches him square in the
Oh,
face.
she cold cocks him. Absolutely. Yeah. And this is very much, I must punch this baby, that
Yep.
kind of thing. Yeah. I,
It's so good.
it's such a
Yeah.
satisfying punching of a child. Absolutely. And
Mhm.
of course, this goat bursts forward and startles her after that, and she falls backwards through those doors, and it's revealed down into a pit that's filled with corpses of many goats and humans, including what is clearly
Charles.
Charles, because there's some spears sticking out of him. um,
Mhm.
and yeah, this is where we get Grace's climb out of the goat pit. And I gotta
Mhm.
say right here,
This is the
this,
most memorable sequence from the first time seeing it.
oh yeah,
Like,
because,
in the theater, I was like, because the whole hand V effect was
yep,
really cool, but
yep.
then, like,
And you
you
see
see the
what's
nail,
coming. Yeah.
and you're
And
like, "Oh, no.
this is,
Oh,
for
no."
me, tied with your previous episode of A Quiet Place as best fastener through extremity scene. Um,
Oh, yeah.
because yeah, the nail through the foot in in
The
A
Quiet
Quiet
Place, yep.
Place, and then this bolt through the hole in her hand, which ultimately saves her. A lot of the
Yeah.
trauma that she experiences in this film is sacrifice in order to keep surviving at the end of the day, because you get this, because the ladder crumbles under her, and basically as soon as she plants her hand over this fastener, and she loses her grip with the other hand, and she's dangling on just by the hole in her hand,
Yeah.
which would totally tear out, with her weight.
Oh, yeah.
Even though she's a tiny person, it would totally tear out.
Yeah, that's
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, she manages to climb back up and rip that hand off of that bolt with a scream. Um, it was a lot. And she uses her
Mhm.
sleeve from her dress to bind her wound. She hisses this, "You little fucker," at Georgie. It's so good.
There was a there was a version of the scene where she punches him again as she's
Nice.
leaving.
Nice.
I wish that was included, but it's understandable to not.
Yeah, no, I get that.
And the whole thing with it's kind of interesting that so like in the Bible, when they're doing ritual or like they're doing sacrifices to God, it's always specified that if you're using a sheep or a goat, that you don't use one with spots or blemishes.
oh,
But they're doing satanic rituals, and so you can see that all the goats are spotted, or they got,
mm,
or they're multicolored, or something of that ilk. So it's kind of a nice little touch that I don't think it was intended, but it's still interesting. To
yeah,
just a nice little flavor if you have the knowledge of the Torah, you know.
nice, nice, and a little extra creepy if you do too, because yeah,
Mhm.
well, um, we get her running up to the gate of the property, or at least the fence line, and she manages to tear a little bit of it up and then slip through a very, very thin portion, but not without more sacrifice, because she gets her back shredded a little bit. Um,
Mhm.
she runs out to the road and there's a car coming by, and it stops because it doesn't want to hit her. But, she's asking for help, and the person in the car just kind of screams at her to get off the road. And I love her string of obscenities at the car.
Yeah,
It's like, "Fucking
and
rich
she's
people."
so upset. Yep,
Yeah. Yeah.
one of the directors was the voice. Yep,
Nice.
yep.
Uh, Alex, he's handcuffed to his bed. We get him starting to work on his bonds at this point, and trying to use the chain from the handcuffs to work through the footboard. Um, and Grace is kind of pursued into the woods by Stevens. He's kind of out there with his car and a very bright flashlight, looking around for her. And then let's see.
She gets the better of him, and
Oh, not
she takes the
before.
car.
Not
Not yet.
before.
Oh.
Yeah, we get Daniel and Emily, the fuck ups, being sent to the
Oh
goat
yeah.
shed to dispose of the maids. And
Hmm.
I love as they're throwing them down into the goat pit, they hit the bottom with such brutal force that just more damage is being done to their bodies. Um, and this is where they find Georgie. And yeah, then we
She doesn't even ask him about his black eye.
yeah,
She's just like, "Oh, Georgie."
right. She's still coked out of her mind. Who knows?
Oh yeah.
But
Yep.
this is where we get Grace, unfortunately, running through an open grassy area because Stevens finally catches up with her, and she kind of jumps out of the way of the car because he's just trying to bump her enough to knock her down or something. And they kind of tussle, and she ends up choking him out with some material from her dress. And she steals his car, and
Yep.
she immediately hits the knockoff OnStar button. And I love this conversation she has with the customer service rep on the other side because it's the whole,
Hmm.
my system's acting up, but sorry, the computer's taking so long. All this shit that happens in regular conversations of this type.
Hmm.
And
And then it's a stolen car. I have to shut it down.
yeah,
And she's just like, "Don't f yourself." She's
he's
just
like,
so
oh,
upset.
okay,
It's
all
just.
right now. It's, because, this is clearly somebody who, deals with people, like this on the
Mhm.
regular, swearing at him. And he's like, yeah, I'm not taking this shit. And we're done now.
Yep.
Bye bye.
Yep.
And so she's just kind of stuck in this immobilized car. And of course, who should appear at her window but Stevens? And he smashes through the window and ultimately tranks her.
Hmm.
And she has this dream of driving off in the car with Alex, rescuing her, but then just ultimately wakes up in the back seat of Steven's car. Um,
All
and
tied up.
yep, all tied up. And we um, we have Steven's FaceTiming everybody. Hey, I got her. I'm on my way back. And he's got his phone in a car mount on the dash, and the family's gathered around a computer talking to him, and he like cranks up the music, and he's just all victorious. And of course,
Yeah.
with the music cranked, he can't hear them warning him that Grace is waking up in the back seat and he needs to watch out. And she gets the better of him, kind of kicking at him and
Yep.
everything, and ultimately causes the car to flip. And we get more of Grace's scream, and the car's toast. Um,
Yep.
and then she climbs out. He's dead. But we get Daniel finding her, and he ends up capturing her. And it's revealed that his father, Tony, was
Tony was there.
standing
Yep.
there behind a tree, and he knew that he was there. And that's why he ends up, like knocking Grace out or whatever. Because,
Hmm.
yeah, he knew he was there. Because he probably
He
would have,
tries to flip.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, he probably would have
And
let
he's
her
just
go.
like, just help me carry her
Yeah,
instead of doing the coin flip.
yeah. We get Becky speaking with Alex in his bedroom, and he's, kind of explaining his reasons for leaving the family and choosing Grace over them. How he got to the point where, he realized all the shit that they were doing was not normal, but it felt
Yep.
normal to him. And that really made him concerned. And that's why he bounced.
Mhm.
And so yeah, he's all in on Grace, he says, and getting away from them. But Becky kind of has her doubts. She's sitting there smoking a cigarette, talking to him. And she thinks at the end of the day, he'll choose family over her. Um,
Mhm.
and we shift to the Ladomises preparing to complete the sacrifice. They've got her, tied down to this table. I'm pretty sure there's a pentagram. Everybody's in their robes.
Yep.
They've got, this cup of wine that they're passing around, taking sips as they chant and, essentially like the year is one, like it's the end of Rosemary's Baby. And all of a sudden they all start having a bit of a reaction because, oh no, the wine's been poisoned. Turns out Daniel flipped after all. He added some hydrochloric acid, a non-lethal dose to the ritual cup. What's his comment? They'll shit weird for a week, but they'll be okay. Because they're all vomiting blood. And I'm thinking to myself, they'll be okay. All right. But
If you say so.
yeah, it's his stomach might be a little tore up, but yeah. So unfortunately, Charity follows them out, and she confronts them. She's got probably Emily's pistol, and
Mhm.
Daniel stands in front of Grace. And unfortunately, Charity chooses the life that she's gained, and she shoots him in the neck, and he drops.
Mhm.
And not quite dead yet, but Grace charges up to her and fights her, and basically uses the pistol to knock her out because it's empty. She just pistol whips her. And
Yep.
Grace is confronted by Tony in another room. They have their little fight. Does she knock him out with the lantern?
Yes, and then she discards it, and it
Of
starts the house
course.
on fire.
Yeah, because she throws it
And
into
then,
the drapes. Uh,
yep, yeah, and then she's confronted by Becky,
yeah, who shoots
where
an arrow right past her head. It's
I'm sorry, I'm rusty.
no, you're good.
No, it's like
I
that's what
know
she
that's
says
the
to her.
line.
But yeah.
but at the end of the day, she can't just kill her anyways because they actually have to sacrifice her, right? So she needs to stop her. So they get into their fight where they're rolling around on the ground at the one head of the table, and Grace reaches up and she grabs the runner and she starts pulling it because she's reaching for anything, but LaBelle's box is on the runner at the other end of the table, so she ultimately pulls it
Mhm.
all the way off. The box falls next to her. She ends up grabbing it and smacking Becky in the head with it. She gets on top of her and beats her head in with a "fuck your family, fuck your fucking family," just as Alex is walking in to see the last bit.
Mhm. Which is exactly when he flips because
Yeah.
he's trying so hard to help her out, but
Yeah,
that was the turning point.
and he comes up to her and you see her kind of pull away from him, and I think that's where you really see him flip for the
Mhm.
family in that moment, because he realizes, oh, no, she doesn't really love me anymore after all this. She can't accept any of this.
Mhm.
This is
Yeah.
essentially done. So he kind of subdues her and screams out, "She's in here." Which, again, I love how they keep coming back to that.
Mhm.
Especially him being the person that always wanted to be, away from the family, who wasn't up for it when he was a child. All these things that he finally is completely all in with everything. And he
And
says
then
the
you see the
phrase,
bloody heart on his shirt.
yeah, yep, yep. And so they've got her back on the table. And this time, Alex is taking the lead with the knife. And there's plenty of hail satans and all of that, and
Mhm.
he goes to take the blow to sacrifice her, and she shifts, and ultimately I think she takes it in the shoulder,
Yep.
but manages to get out of her bonds there and get up and rip the knife out of her shoulder and hold them all back, and she's screaming bloody murder at this point. And I'll say,
She's
Samara
feral.
oh yes, she is. And Samara Weaving's scream, I'll say, It's getting up there with Cheryl Lee's from Twin Peaks, but it's not quite as good as Cheryl Lee's scream. That one's an all timer, but Samara, she's got some pipes. She does. She holds them back, and ultimately the sun rises, and Helene throws back the curtains, and they get that blast of light, and everybody's reaction just cowering from the light. You get Fitch. And
Tony's hiding under the table.
Yeah. And everybody is like, "Oh no!" And then they realize nothing's happening, and they all kind of come to that realization one by one, right? And everybody stands back up, and they're like, "Huh." And then Fitch is like, "What do we do about her?" Because even though it seems like everybody's in the clear and everything, they got witness, right? So
Holly is the first to make a move, right?
Oh yeah, she's. Yep. I don't think we ever talked about, other than her beheading the one maid, how her weapon is this big old battle
axe.
Yeah, yes. Where the head of the axe is as big as her head, and she's kind of got an axe-shaped haircut as it is too, which is kind of funny. Yeah. It's funny because all of this took place in, let's see, this would have been late 80s, back when her husband was killed in the ritual, and so she had that very short, severe 80s haircut and kind of grew into an older person's version of that. But yeah, she goes charging at Grace with that axe, and just halfway through, about trying to land that blow, just explodes in this burst of blood and gore that coats just about every surface you possibly could, and everybody just stands there just stunned. And I love this shot of Henry Czerny standing there. He's got the wall and a painting on it behind him, and gore covering it, dripping down, and you hear a bit of it plop on the credenza that's underneath, and it's just comedic timing. It's so perfect, that plop. And this is where we get the record player with the warped record because of the heat from the fire nearby, starting to fire itself up on its own, playing the hide and seek song. You get that run, run, run. And Fitch is next to go. And then Charity. Emily sees this. She grabs her sons and runs screaming out of the room. And off camera, we hear a pop, pop, pop. And you see the blood and gore fly back into the room. Because, of course, they can't make the little kids explode on screen. That would just be too much, right? Oh, God. It's at this point.
Child's already been punched.
Yeah, exactly.
He doesn't need to explode on screen.
And it's at this point that Grace begins to laugh. And Tony's not going to go out like this. And he's like, no. And then he pops. And this is where Grace snorts again. It was already established that she was a snort laugher much earlier in the film, in like that opening scene of hers and Alex's.
Yep.
And Alex is left alone, the last of the Lodomas, standing there just begging Grace for forgiveness because he doesn't want to die. Suddenly it's everything he can do to save himself. And, he's just begging her, and she looks at him and she's like, I want a divorce, and throws her wedding ring at him. As soon as it hits his chest, he explodes with this burst that completely coats her head to toe. It's
it's such a great timing, just like with all of the pops happening.
Oh, yeah,
because like the sunrise, and it's like, oh, and then it just holds. And holds until it gets really awkward.
You see their eyes kind of like peek open to see what's happening in those moments. Yeah. Everybody's got.
Then the pops happen.
Yep. Yep. And I think we get another one of those bits of gore like falling from the ceiling onto the table
Yep.
after all this, too. Again,
As she's leaving. Yep.
wonderful comedic timing. And she looks back at the chair by the fireplace, and Mr. LaBelle, Satan himself, shows up for a moment and he gives her this approving nod. And she just lets out this super low key fuck. And
As she walks out.
we get the first strands of Love Me Tender, a cover of it at least, starting to play as she kind of walks out of the burning building in slow motion, sits down on the steps and sparks up a cigarette. You've got the flashing lights of emergency services arriving and everything. And somebody walks up to her, asking what happened. And, she kind of takes a little bit of a drag and's like, in-laws. And then
It's such a perfect
credits.
ending right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you get the rest of that cover of Love Me Tender there through the credits. And if you stay till the very end, you get a stinger from the hide and seek song with the whole "Ready or Not, Here I Come" and a little bit of satanic laughter. But yeah, that's Ready or Not.
Yeah, there was something that that was brought up earlier with the opening shots of all the board games.
Yeah.
And it's this really cool set design that so first off, they submitted 200 names and they only got 8 of them.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Approved. So I mean, but it's awesome that the ones that they did get approved are ones that are pretty much plot important. So
Sure.
they kind of foreshadow it. So we got Mr. LaBelle's Gambit, which is what allowed the Domus family to have their empire in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Sunrise is very important as that's when the game expires.
Yeah, and I think that one's supposed to be a sci-fi themed board game, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And of course, Family Ritual, which is something they were trying to do with Grace. Secret Council. I mean, it's a pretty secretive thing for them to do this whole family thing.
Sure.
Because nobody's really going to know about it, I guess that's kind of a stretch, but I'm not sure what abracadabra could be, but I guess black magic, I suppose.
Sure.
That's kind of what it is,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Nice.
Just really picked up on that this time, and I thought that was really good. Just really good set design and stuff like that.
Oh yeah. It's I think some of the interiors were shot at Casa Loma in Toronto. Anybody that's ever been a part of a school trip there has always had to go to that place too. It's a filming location that, I mean, since film has been around, essentially everybody uses Casa Loma.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, this film is fun as hell. It looks so good. It's, from the lighting and just the sets and the costuming. Holy crap, it's good. It's everyone's costumes kind of tells you, their wedding attire kind of tells you exactly who they are as a person. Between Charity's dress and, just even Becky with her getup, of course she's the matriarch there, but she's all in black. It's, it's good. It's, radio silence, don't miss.
Yeah, I haven't seen much of their other stuff, but I've seen this Abigail and their Scream movies, and I've had a great time with all of them. And it's crazy that this was made with only $6 million.
I know.
That's a lot of smart budgeting right there to get that. But it brought in 57 at the box office. So I mean, obviously they're doing it right.
Yeah. I mean, that's still not a ton of money, but compared to the budget, decent.
Yeah.
Very decent. And, horror films aren't necessarily expected to blow up to the, $1 billion range.
No.
But, it's, Radio Silence will continue to make some fun stuff based on their successes, because clearly the Scream films that they did were hits, and hopefully Abigail makes some decent bank for them. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Paramount was foolish to let him go.
oh, yeah. Yep. Yep. And then, well, there was also kerfuffles over Scream 7 anyways, but yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You're right. Absolutely foolish to let those guys go. I need to make an actual effort to watch some of those anthology films that they're a part of that, they really cut their teeth on. I think a good number of them are on Shudder, so I really don't have a ton of excuses. I just need to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Drew, any final thoughts on Ready or Not?
Well, well, the first time I saw it, I was really hoping that the whole like satanic ritual thing was going to be a bunch of crap. So I thought that would just be a lot funnier. But I mean, what I got was definitely great too. And I think I really appreciate it this time around, like having it be a satanic ritual thing that like the consequences of dabbling in forces that you can't truly understand completely.
It's kind of a reverse Rosemary's Baby, right?
Well, I haven't seen that one, but
Oh,
I hear about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's put it this way. At the end of the day, yeah, the family does not win in this film. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, just fantastic film. I want to see Samara Weaving do other stuff with Radio Silence. She had that
Mm-hmm.
little cameo in Scream 6, but other than that, and just more horror in general. She's good at it. It's
Yeah.
she's got the scream for it, very much so. I think Andy McDowell, I don't think she absolutely wanted to do a horror film, but this one just absolutely grabbed her. I can't remember what the exactly how that played out, but it would be fun to see her do some other stuff like this.
Yeah, I know they talked about in the commentary how
Right.
like it was like she was excited. She's like, "I'm in a horror," and she was just really giddy about that.
And good for her, because she was fantastic
Yeah.
in this. So good.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so yeah, Ready or Not, watch it, everybody. Drew, where can people find you?
You can
If you'd like.
find me on the Twitters and the Instagrams at Two Feist Two Furious, and I believe that's also my letterbox. You can find me there. If you find me in real life, you didn't.
Yeah.
Well, you probably might. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been Murders with Mertens, a horror film podcast. Thank you for letting us tickle your ear holes. Please like, share, and subscribe if you are so inclined. I'll be back soon enough with another episode. But until next time, stay spoopy, everyone.